This is part 2 of empowering your end users with NICE. We're talking about everything you can do from the viewer app. So, I am your host, Jeremy Clutch, Senior RTS for the West. We have the chat bots answering your questions in the Q&A. Please use the Q&A. We have Chad Evans and Bryce Edwards, RTSs for Northeast and West Coast. Like I said, please use the Q&A. The Q&A is up there. You can click on it. It gives us the ability to answer questions right after the question and be tagged to the question. If you use the chat, it kind of just adds everything in the chat, no specific order, just last in. So please use the Q&A. And we will have question breaks after each section here. All right, what to expect in this webinar. We did part 1 last month, and that video is posted to Management Cloud, the YouTube, and the help sites, so you can go back and refresh or view it if you missed it. What we're going to cover here in part 2 is surveillance options and configuration from viewer, user management, and remote system configuration you can do from the viewer. What not to expect: troubleshooting specific systems or problems, contact tech support or your RTS for help there, answering questions that are not pertaining to the NICE user empowerment through the viewer interface. All right, with that said, let's dive in. ELAN OS, surveillance options and configuration. So with our new cameras we've added, they've had some new features added as well. So first thing up is a lovely lightning bolt you'll see in the live view. I've had a lot of people go, what the heck is this lightning bolt? Well, what this lightning bolt is going to do is give you a video summary from 12 o'clock midnight the day before. So what it's going to do, and I'll click on here, and it will give us a little video, and it's kind of fast forwarding through the video until it sees motion. And when it sees motion, it'll go to real time. And when that motion event disappears or ends, it will go back to fast forward. And then it's going to fast forward to the next event. This is a quick, easy way to see what's happened in the last anywhere from 12 to 24 hours. Okay. Well, with that being done as a live view option, we had to add a NVR option. So if you're in an NVR setup and you're looking at the NVR, you can see the double arrow here circled in red. That double arrow will take you to the next event. So if you look at the list of events, it currently says all objects, and you can see multiple colored events at the bottom. If you wanted it to be just vehicle, you can select just vehicle, and only the vehicle tick marks will show up, and it'll go between the vehicle tick marks, or in this case, it's all. Okay. Now, this also works with custom tick marks as well. So if you add security contact tick marks to cameras, they can pop up as well. For example, on my house, I have any camera near a entry or exit door, for example, front door, back door, or mudroom door into the garage, any of the cameras close to those, I have those security contacts added to them as custom tick marks. So if anybody opens a front door, there's a tick mark thrown on the camera. That way it can be a tick mark to let you know of when the door was open, whether motion catches it or not. Okay. Then with the new cameras, we did add audio support because they do have two-way audio. You have the speaker volume and a push-to-talk mic button. So it is a push-to-talk. That way it is not trying to hear everything you say. You can press and hold the button when you want to talk. This is going to be for the new 4-megapixel, 8-megapixel cameras. And we also do record audio on those cameras as well. New event selector. So with the new premium themes, the tiles type themes, we have updated the events list. In the past, on the what they think they're calling vintage now, the vintage themes, it was a scroll bar down the right side that you would have to fling up to get to multiple events. And it would show maybe 4 or 5 events at the same time, depending on the viewer, depending on the screen. This has gone to a full screen version. That way you can see much more events, see the time, see more data, and click on them directly and go straight to those events. And again, this is only available on the premium themes. With that, we also added what's called rich notifications. Oh, but everybody's always asked for this. It includes a camera snapshot of motion. So if it is an event, you can set it up where if motion is detected, send a push notification and send a screenshot or a image. Now, you are limited to 325 push notifications with snapshot a month to mobile devices. There is a cost involved with sending these pictures. So we have limited it to 325. There are future plans to expand that to give more, but there's going to be an additional cost, and figuring out how to monetize that is the problem we are having right now. After you've hit your 325 limit, you will still receive the push notifications. You just will not get the picture. Now, local devices, ITPs, HR40 are not included in that 325 amount. So, being that those are local devices, those pictures will be sent no matter what. So, for example, if because of the way my house is set up, I have a U-shaped driveway and it's at the end of the house, and Amazon can't figure out which is the front of the house and which is the back of the house. So usually they will either go to the back or the front, which I have motion detection set up. So if a person is detected on the front, it will send me a push notification and a screenshot. Same thing with the back of the house. Somebody goes to the back porch, push notification, screenshot. That also pops up on all my touch screens. So any of the touch screens in the house will pop up with that image as well. You do not want to send snapshots like this to 10 mobile devices at a time, because guess what? It uses 10 of your 325. So definitely not have motion on a camera that sees a busy roadway, and you will end up with a lot of screenshots of people's cars driving by and wasting those 325 per month. Okay, I think I've beat the dead horse now. Next up, live deterrent. The new cameras have added a live deterrent feature. The 8 megapixels have a red and blue flashing light. The 4 megapixels have a white flashing light, or can just turn the light on as a flood. Really nice little feature. A lot of people have asked for, but because we also have two-way audio, we can also have it when it sees motion, flash the red and blue light, and play a sound or a phrase. And with Milo, you can add your own custom phrases. The old-fashioned "get off my lawn" is always a great one. At my house, when I first set it up, I annoyed the kids with a "smile, you are being recorded" from Milo. So you can have some fun with it. I recommend it. Okay. And it can be determined by what type of event, whether it's a person, a vehicle, or just straight up motion. Or it could even be done off a custom trigger. All right. Smart color options for night vision with these new cameras. You have the ability to turn a floodlight on at all times at night and go full color. But in some parts of the US and the world, white flashing lights or solid lights on all the time at night is called light pollution, and not everybody's a fan of that. So we can do what's called smart night vision. So it's goes IR during normal. When it sees motion, it can flip the light on and go to full color. And then when that motion event is ended, it can flip back to IR. You can also do it to just IR only, and it doesn't matter if it sees motion or not, it'll still say in IR mode. Okay. All right, let's talk about something else that popped up with these new cameras that everybody asked for, which was tripwire. But we added tripwire and regions here. So in your advanced settings on the cameras, you can, on the new cameras, you can set up tripwire and regions. So this is a picture of my driveway from one of my cameras on the end of the house, which I set up 2 tripwires, one for the north driveway and one for the south driveway. And then I did a region. So with the region, if somebody enters that region, I can get a push notification. This way I'm getting notification if somebody actually pulls in the drive versus somebody just pulling in to turn around. So how do we configure these? These are done through the viewer. And here is the north tripwire. If you notice, there's an A and a B side of that tripwire. You can set it up for what type of direction you want notification off of, whether you want it A to B, B to A, or both. You can also set up and adjust the sensitivity, and you can set it up for person or vehicle or neither. Okay. Now, when we go to the region, default should be about 5 or 6 points. I have this one currently set up with 8 points. You do max out at 10 points for that region. And you just basically draw the region where you want it to be. And you can set up trigger off of appear, meaning it appears in that region, or on pass as it goes through the region. And you can set it up for direction, whether it's going in or leaving. There's an activation time on here and sensitivity as well that you can play with. The other camera we added this year was a pt2. So with the pt2, you have quite a bit of control that will disappear if you do not do anything with it. So you see the little tab at the top left, that is to lock the controls on the screen. Otherwise, they disappear and you go to hit the button and where you hit becomes the center of the pt2 image. So with the pt2, if you touch your finger anywhere on the screen that does not hit a button, that becomes the new center of the image. Really quick navigation to, for example, if I wanted to go to the middle of that garage door, I just hit right in the middle of the garage door, and now that becomes the center of the image. If you press and hold, it will give you arrow keys or a hat switch off the sides of where your finger is, and then you can motion off of that to move the camera. You can see we do have the mic and speaker buttons here. We have a star for favorites. That's our presets. And then you have your zoom in and out buttons. So if we hit that star button, you get the preset control to pop up. And you can set all your presets in here. You can rename them by editing. You can change what they're saving on what they're looking at. And you can have quite a few in here. Patrols and scans are something that you have to go into advanced settings and set up. So before we get to that, let's look at the preset controls. You can just hit your edit button. And once you hit the edit button, you can change the name, you can delete it, or you can save it. Keep in mind, whatever that camera is looking at when you hit save is what position it's going to be saved at. So if we're going to pt2 control and want to look at patrols and scans, we hit the patrols and scans and we can go in there and create them. A patrol is going to be multiple points. So in this case, I created a patrol and went through multiple places in the pt2's presets. Now, if we want to look at scans, scan is between 2 different points. Okay. On both of these, we can set up speed, so how fast we want the camera to move, and how long of a delay we want between movements. So currently the speed set at 1 and 12 seconds between jumps. So it's going to go to 0.1 for 12 seconds, then go to 0.2 for 12 seconds, and back and forth. Same thing with the patrols. So once you create these, you can go back to the viewers and you can hit play on the patrol or scan. There's also the stop button at the bottom. Once you trigger a patrol or scan, it will state at the top of the image, the patrol or scan is active. Okay. To stop that patrol or scan, like I said earlier, you hit that favorite button, you go to patrol or scans and hit stop. With these features, you do have the ability to adjust who has access to these features. For example, the audio listen, the audio talk, pt2 control, privacy mask control, and even NVR playback can be limited to users, whether it's standard, guest, or admin only. We will talk about user classification in the next section. Just as a reminder, we did cover it in the last webinar series. But if, for example, the admin is the only one you want to have privacy mask control, set that instead of standard to admin. Next up would be UIX tracking activity. UIX is a function of our on-screen display where it basically takes the output of any of the controllers with an HDMI output and creates an NVR style output, where it'll give you, a 4 camera view, a 9 camera view, or I believe it'll go 16 and all the way up to 20. I will tell you the bigger views do require quite a bit of processing power, and you may want to dumb down resolutions when you get past the 9 camera view. The 9 camera view has been one of the most reliable setups with the higher resolutions. So that's what I currently run at my house, is the 9 camera view. And what we have here is kind of like those push messages with the snapshot sent to you. This actually, if you're using UIX and it sees motion on one of the cameras, it will jumbo size that camera for that motion and pull it up on the screen. Now you can set it up to go to the smaller view, or you can go full view. Full view takes up almost the entire screen. Depending on what you're doing, may be a little cumbersome, maybe what you need. But it does give you the ability to turn this on and off from the UIX controls in a touchscreen or a mobile device when you are using UIX. All right, that covers our section on surveillance. Do we have any questions from the guys?
Can you create a counter on tripwires, like for how many customers entered a store?
Yes, you can. It's a fun thing to do. I have done it before for a client that had a camera on their alleyway that they wanted to know how many people had gone down the alleyway. It's literally just whenever motion's detected, you do an event map with a variable and just add one to the variable. Then you can go with a custom page and display the variable and do a static text above it saying how many customers came in the door. And you can set it up to reset every day, or you can keep it running.
Well, how many points can patrol have on a pt2?
Patrol. I have not maxed it out. I think I had 8 points on mine, but I have not maxed it out. So that would be something I would have to make a crap load of points and see how far it goes.
All right.
Any other questions? If not, we will jump into the next section.
Is it possible to get?
Whoop.
Go ahead, Chad.
Go ahead, Bryce.
Is it possible to get the PTZ to follow a person when they're seen?
That is an option in the camera itself. You would have to log into the camera itself and turn that on. Currently, that is not available in the ELAN GUI. We figured the patrols and scans would be the first step. We may or may not have a bigger PTZ coming in the future that we may bring that feature in at that time. Chad?
Can the homeowner see how many rich text notifications they've used for the month?
No, they cannot.
Because that's by monthly usage, right? So
yeah, it's monthly usage. It can be seen from config, but not from viewer.
So something the dealer would have to give them.
Yes, the dealer would have to look at and give them that information. It is in configurator that shows you how many push notifications you've sent with rich notifications. All right. Any other questions?
Nope.
If not, yep. Go ahead.
No, that's all good.
All right. All good. We're going to go to the next section. We're going to talk about user management. Keep in mind this, we're talking everything you can do from the viewer, which technically means the end user could do it if you give them advanced settings, but also things that the dealer can do without having to open up a laptop. So let's talk about user management here. And I've got 2 slides here to go through this. I want to cover everything here because some of the stuff has changed and added different classifications over the last couple of years. Obviously, username's obvious. Class and access, we now have guest, standard, and admin. Guest can have viewer access or no remote access, and that is remote access. Standard user can have viewer access or no access, and then we have our admin, and you've got your options for config, viewer, and both. Local pin. This is a local pin that can be used for touchscreen unlock, for utilities, or privacy mask if needed. So think of it as a global 4-digit pin for their ELAN system. We isolated the door lock pin, so that could be a different pin. For Z-Wave door locks, this will send this code to the actual locks themselves. If you're using a Yale Wi-Fi, those pins have to be entered into the lock itself through its app. We also added the security disarm pin. So with your security panel, you have the ability to do Bluetooth disarming through the touchscreen. So we have to have a place to secure and type in that security system pin. With the new door stations and fobs, we can also disarm there as well. I'll cover that in the next couple slides. Hence the entry fob permission right here, where you can enter the fob ID by user. System access password pops up automatically, a random default password. You can change that. I highly recommend changing it to make a lot of end users life easier. I usually try to do a 4-digit number. That way it's the same as their door lock code or their local pin, or maybe even their security pin. But whenever they do give you a 4-digit number, I always tell them, give me a 4-digit number that is not your ATM pin code. And 9 times out of 10, the end user will go, oh, I was about to give you my pin code. Thank you for telling me not to. So it does happen because everybody uses the same 4-digit number for damn near everything. So we isolate and make sure we're not doing that. Then we also have email address and user's phone number. These are just placeholders to store that information for you. We are not using them here. It is just an easy way. So if you have a his and a hers login, you can have their email, their phone number there for contact. Highly recommend not using a single user for everybody in the house. You should be setting up individual users for each individual person. That way, facial recognition can actually work. You can set up independent door lock codes, independent security codes, and we can use that information to trigger events. In the past, one of the other RTSs in the past set it up so each of his kids had a different door lock pin and did event maps off of who unlocked the front door. You could always have it if whoever unlocks the front door to get in the house gets their music playing first. Just different things you can do. Custom greeting upon login. So using facial recognition or the 4-digit PIN code to unlock a touchscreen or to go into a flyout, you can have it speak a greeting every time it sees you. Warning, this can get annoying if it's in a common area where you walk by it all the time and it says, hello, hello, hello. So it can be, a little overwhelming for some clients. So be careful with it. Also, the flyout with login. Anytime it sees them, do you want the flyout to open? If it's in a common area where you always see people walking by, may not want to do it. But if it's on a desktop or something there, you might want to. Utilities advanced control. This is where you can set up who has utilities access. So I will cover the actual parts and pieces a little later, but this is where you would turn on utilities access using the standard PIN. And then you have your default profile device. So if you have his account and a her account, you can log his phone and lock it into his profile and her phone into her profile. Okay. We can discuss when that phone changes and they get a new phone, how they can update that later. All right, so let's talk user profile extension class. So guest is a very, very basic user. They do not have any type of access to settings, basic or advanced, on their screen. And they also do not have the ability to receive notifications. So push notifications are not there. This is a great option for kids or Airbnb guests. Then if we look at the standard user can get the ability to add guest users or standard users. They can edit or delete standard users, guest users. They cannot edit or delete an admin, and standard users can get push notifications if they are targeted. Now, if we look at admin is the highest level. They get advanced settings without need to enter a password. So some of you may have seen that with 9.0 when you've got an admin user who logs in. They don't have to hit the button to type in the 4-digit code to get advanced settings. It's already there. You have admins can control admins, standard user, and guest user. So this last note here, I want to talk about this because a lot of people have missed this. Management Cloud does not use the admin password to log in. So you use the admin password to verify login, and then it will create a hidden password and save it in the background. With that being said, if somebody changes the admin password, the Management Cloud login that was verified previously does not lose access. To get rid of that Management Cloud login, you would have to go into the users in advanced settings, and you would have to delete that user to delete their access. All right. Now let's talk about remote access. So each class has remote access privileges. So most of these are going to have viewer access automatically when local, and you can configure what they get. The next question is, do you want them to have remote access? So the guest, do you want them to have remote access or no access? For the Airbnb application, you don't want them to have any access when they're off site. Standard user, no access or viewer access. This could be a maid or it could be dog walker, it could be something like that. I would usually give them a guest access, not a standard, but you could. Or it could be the kids in the house. Depending on how the company that you work for does things, admin may be dealer only, it may be end user and higher level. So admin access can have viewer access, config access, or full access, depending on what you want to do there. All right. So let's just scroll through our options that we have here. Door lock pin setup. So with Z-Wave or Wi-Fi door locks, you have the ability to set up one of 30 slots to a user. Once you assign a user to a slot, then you can hit the lock assign button and determine which locks they have access to. So if you have a client with a wine cellar, they may not want everybody to have access. For example, in my house, my office, I'm the only one who has access through that office door. Now, of course, my wife knows my code because, come on now, she knows everything about me. So, and she can get in, so there's no point in me trying to lock her out. But this limits my kids having access to get into my office. Next up would be Bluetooth disarming with a security pin. We talked earlier about having that security pin in there. And we can modify these settings under security in the viewer. And I wanted to point this out because we did set up the security pin in the viewer. You can control which touchscreens have access for Bluetooth disarming. This is all good and well, but I think the next item works much better than Bluetooth security disarming. In my opinion, the ELAN DB works much better when you add the fobs to it. So here we're talking about the WP and the 2W. So you have PoE or Wi-Fi, or you have the old school 2-wire with a PoE injector. Once you have these on the system, you can actually get the linear key fobs. These are the 3 supported models. So you have the actual fob that can go on a keychain. You have the smart card, which has the eyelet for like a lanyard. And then you have the clamshell, which is more like a credit card. The credit card style, you can just keep in your wallet. That way you can just take your wallet, touch it up to it. Once you enter these in and you go to save these fob, there is a 4-digit number on the fob. I recommend putting it in as the label, not just the user's name, because then you have no way of knowing which unit it is. If you put in the 4-digit number off of the fob, it makes it much easier to track which fob is whose. Okay. So once we have fobs registered, then you can control when they have access to the system. This is, in my opinion, the best option for your dog walker, your cleaning lady, your pool guy, people that need access to the house, that need to be able to unlock doors and maybe disarm an alarm, but you don't want to give them a key and you don't want to give them a door lock code and you don't want to give them an alarm code. They can all trigger all this in the background just with a key fob. So you might want to limit their access. They can have all day access, no entry, or schedule their access. So if you've got a cleaning lady that's only supposed to be there on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 8 to 4, you can set up and lock them out any other time. This was a feature that was always asked for on the Z-Wave locks. The problem with doing it directly on the Z-Wave locks is you would have to reprogram the locks every time something changed. Quite cumbersome and a pain to get done every time. This way, with the fob, we can set up 2 functions off of that fob being registered off of the door station. So we can disarm alarm partition, unlock a door, or trigger a door or relay. That can be used for mag lock or trip latch or garage door control. The thing I really like about these key fobs is you're giving them a fob that could be deactivated at any time. Housekeeper loses the fob, loses the card. Well, just go into viewer and deactivate that device. You don't have to worry about a rogue key running around, or, oh, you gave them a door lock code and a disarm code, and now they're disgruntled and they can get in your house at any time. This is an easy way to give you the ability to give access and then easily remove access at any point in time. Next up is utilities pin. We talked about this being earlier, so it uses the local access pin, and then you give them the check mark if their utilities pin will work for utilities. So with utilities, you have the ability to have it set to default lock with pin, read only, cycle only with pin, and hide. Highly recommend anything that is modem or router or networking probably wants to be cycle only or cycle only with pin. For example, you can look at my MB1500 here, where the network selection there is cycle only with pin. Notice the on-off switch is grayed out. Bank 2 is control. It is lock with pin. So with a pin, you can cycle or you can power on or off. Sources I have set up to cycle only. So you can only cycle it, no on and off, but you don't need a pin. And then my AV matrix here on bank 4 is default, so you can power cycle it or turn it on and off, no pin required. This gives you the ability to lock out end users from what level of power cycling capability they have. Mobile device manager. This is something that was asked for a long time, because we know how clients like to get a new phone and not tell anybody and just complain that it's not working. Well, what changed? Nothing changed. Did you get a new phone? Well, yeah, I got a new phone, but it should just work, right? Well, this gives you the ability with the mobile device manager to scan a QR code and create new users. So if you need to set up a guest phone, we can go in there and select what type of device. Okay. What's the system name, obviously, what user level, and if we wanted to copy it from a device. So if you've got a homeowner that just got a new phone, they'd obviously want to just reset it up as their device and copy their old interface. So if we look at user permissions, hey, look, it's just like what we can set up in the user setup. And we can just tie it straight to a specific user. Okay. Then we have the copy from. We can copy from any device. So if you wanted to match a touchscreen or a laptop input, whatever you wanted to copy it from, you can. You cannot copy from a level higher than the user is that's doing it. So if a guest user is trying to add another guest user, they can't add an admin. A standard user cannot add an admin or copy from an admin. And once you select next, it will pop up this lovely QR code. Yes, this QR code is from my system. Don't try to use it because I've modified it. You won't get into my system. And notice that it says at the bottom, QR code only valid while visible on this device. So if you bring this up on a touchscreen and somebody tries to take a picture of it and tries to use it later, after that window is closed out on the touchscreen, that QR code is no longer valid. Great little security feature for adding users. Now, once you've done this, I highly recommend going back into that user and setting their profile device. So if it's a his user and they've already got his phone saved in there and you add a new his phone, best thing to do is go into that user and change that profile device to the new phone as the default. Now, this next slide I added from Tuesday's webinar. So this is a new slide from Tuesday's webinar, but because I had to add it. Registration of devices. So a lot of times you see people add a phone and it just comes into the system as a phone. Well, and then the next iPhone comes in and it pops up as an iPhone. And the next one pops up as an iPhone, as all the same device. Well, on that device, if you have not logged in locally and remotely, this comes into case for remote users. Remote users will not automatically pop up a user that you can modify. Like your touchscreens auto-populate. If you've got a remote user with a viewer, it does not auto-populate. So you may need to go in and click on configure this station in the advanced settings and hit registration so you can register that device. All right. Any questions?
Yes. Is there a keypad that can be integrated with ELAN?
Define keypad, because we have currently a KP7, which is a user interface, but I think they're talking more of a numeric keypad for access.
Yep.
There is one in the works. The next generation workstation will have a keypad built in for one of them as an option. There are always multiple options. For example, the linear keypads just give us a relay output that you can trigger off of and go as a contact closure using a 6 sense input. And then some of the door stations out there that are SIP door stations have keypads built in. But a lot of times those features are built into the door station yourself, and they have to be programmed in there versus being the programming brought into the viewer. Next question.
Chad, you got one?
Is there anything that needs to be done with the door station to enable the key fobs or the cards?
Yes, you do have to turn on fob access in config before you can add the fobs. It's just a quick checkbox. You just click in config. Yes, I want to add key fobs to this door station. That was added because we added that feature after the door stations were initially added. So it does not automatically turn that on. You do have to turn that on. Any other questions, or we'll jump into the next section? Trying to get this done in the hour.
That's all I've got.
Alrighty. So away we go. Remote system configuration. A lot of times your end user will ask you to change something, and being remote, sometimes some of that seems to be a pain, but let's show you what you can do without having to break open a laptop that you can do from a phone and help your end user out. For example, in the media section, there's quite a few things in here. One of my favorites is Find My Remote, because we all know how many times a remote gets lost in a living room, it gets shoved in a couch, or it's under a blanket, or one of the kids stole it and took it to their room. You know, you can hit Find My Remote, and then it'll give you a list of the remotes and the ability to locate. Notice that this Benjamin's HR40 in the list is offline. Well, if the battery's dead or if it's offline, guess what? We can't locate it. In this case, I made sure it was powered off, so basically battery being dead. So it would show up that you can't locate it when it's offline. It takes a little common sense here. But any of the others that have a battery life and are on, you can hit locate and it'll start beeping the remote and continue to beep the remote until you find it. TV channel groups is the next thing we have in here we can modify. So if you're using our TV grouping from TV media, where you can basically bring in the channel guide for whatever service you're using, whether DirecTV, Dish, cable, whatever, you can modify the channel groups. So in those channel groups, you have some defaults created: networks, family, learning, kids, news, sports, movies, music, whatever. And you can modify what's in those groups. Obviously, networks, you'd probably want to put your main local networks in there. Kids, throw the kids in there. Sports, throw your ESPN and whatever flavor of pay-per-view service you have for your sports, whether it be something like NFL Sunday Ticket or, you know, MLB, NHL, NBA. I know I'm missing a bunch, but you can configure that all from here, and that will determine what shows up in that group. These groups are what display for favorites on the HR40. So this is a way you can go in and modify what shows up on the HR40 for the guides. Next up would be Bluetooth. Bluetooth from the touchscreens. All of our ITP 1 and 2 touchscreens have a Bluetooth chip built in, which you can stream that Bluetooth audio to one of the main controllers with an audio output and have that as a local source. This is a great option for a kitchen where you might have somebody want to watch a YouTube video on an iPad and play the audio through the speakers. You can do this. Also, for those cases where you've got that buddy that comes over and you want to listen to his music, but you don't want to give him Wi-Fi access or control of the system. We all have those friends, right? But we want to listen to music, and we can set them up so they can Bluetooth in. So each touchscreen device can do up to 3 Bluetooth devices. If you need to go to a 4th, you have to delete one of the other 3. We can also set up what it does when it receives Bluetooth from that device. So if it's a kitchen touchscreen and it receives Bluetooth signal, do you want it to turn on that zone? Which player do you want it to play out of? And do you want it to include other zones as well? All can be configured from the touchscreen. Now, the next one I'm glad we added because it always happened. Somebody changed their login for their Pandora or their Spotify, or they forgot the password and they changed it. Now you got to change it in here. Well, this gives you the ability to log in to those autonomic premium devices. You can look at the specs, see what firmware it's on, and you can see if there's a firmware update off their website or the AMB. You can see what firmware's ID on there. And then we can go to reset their Pandora if they need to reset their Pandora. You can add Pandora users. So if you want to have multiple users, you can add them in here just by locally going in there, giving a nickname, username, password, and then who's the account owner. So if you want to set up a his and a hers Pandora, you can lock them in to their user IDs. And then if they go to the flyout, swipe over, enter their user code, or use facial rec, it will always play from their account. Okay. So when you go to that account opener, you can select whose account it is. All right. Next up is Storage Manager. Storage Manager will give you the ability to look at your USB hard drives that are plugged in for NVR. You can format them, you can modify them, but you can also navigate a NAS drive. Different controllers have different specs for what they can do with a NAS drive. Definitely check with your RTS or sales before double check, making sure you grab the right NAS drive for the unit you're using. NAS drives that work on SC10, SC300 may not work on a 350. And the one that will work on a 350 may not work on a SC10 or 300. So double check with your RTS. But once you add that device, you've got a couple options. You can set it up for music and you can set it up for photos. Photos is a cool feature to add. And when the touchscreens in the house go to sleep, they can play a slideshow of the saved photos. Also, if you have a NAS drive and you throw their music on there, there is the ability to refresh whatever the list of music is there. So if you add music to it, you can go in here and rescan the folder, or you can hit the add music and add more folders for access. Now, this music folder is limited to 500 tracks. Not a lot, but it does give you some ability to use a NAS drive for music, and that audio would come out any of the controllers that have an audio output. Doorbell does take priority. So if you're listening to music in one zone and the doorbell has to play in others, the doorbell will take priority. All right. Next up would be intercom. lot of stuff here we can play with, and keep in mind, we're doing all this from the viewer. So most of your end users would have ability to modify these features. So under intercom settings, you have groups for this station and groups that are system wide. In the past, intercom groups had to be set up per interface. If you have 12 touchscreens and you have to set up the groups on all 12 touchscreens, and you have 3 interface groups you want to do, an upstairs, a downstairs, and a backyard, that's going to take quite a bit of time. And if they're going to be the same groups on each touchscreen, might as well do them as system wide. And if you click in, for example, this stations, you can go in here and see that mine, I have no intercom groups on this station, but you hit the add button at the bottom and you can add whatever groups you want. I decided in my house, it's more common to use these system wide. So I did an upstairs, a downstairs, and an outdoor. This gives you the ability to page into zones. You can choose user, touchscreens, mobile devices, or audio zones. I've set these up in my house as audio zones, so my upstairs can page the kids' bedrooms, the kids' bath, and gives me a way to page upstairs and yell at the kids without having to yell. So I can page from the kitchen touchscreen, go, hey kids, dinner's ready, come on down, instead of having to go yell and scream and they don't hear. Because this will override whatever's playing in their rooms. If they're watching TV, listening to music, guess what? It mutes that and plays my voice. They are forced to listen. Sometimes they don't like that, but they deal with it. So when you adjust that, you also have to go into the media zone paging and configure the page volume and the turn on delay. I highly recommend not doing this through AVRs, because AVRs sometimes can take 5 to 10 seconds to turn on. Same thing with doorbell. I usually don't recommend through AVRs because it can take forever to turn on. Try to do it through your whole house audio zones. And if you're using IPDs, 4 to 6 zones max. If you got the volume set right, it'll work great. Another thing to mention on the last slide is your power control and volume control. After you select include, it gives you the options for power control and volume control. Do you want it to override volume if the volume's low? Do you want to bring the volume up? If the zone is off, do you want it to turn on? For example, here my back porch, if it's not turned on, it's not going to play in that zone. So if I'm not on the back porch, not listening to music or watching TV, it's not going to turn that zone on and page in that zone if it's not already on. All right. Then also your intercom sound settings. So you can configure what happens on ring, what happens on page. For page, I really like Big Ben or Foghorn. They're nice and loud, and you cannot ignore them. You do have the ability to add custom tones. Highly recommend trial and error on this one because some tones will not work. The file may be too large. But it is possible. Get with your RTS if you want to do that. I've found a couple websites that have some nice little tones. I may not have added Rickrolled to some coworkers' doorbells. Can it be proved who logged in or who did it? But there are some things out there. For example, the Jetsons doorbell came off of copyright, so that's openly out there, and there's a lot of different ones out there. All right. Next up would be utility settings. What can we adjust for the utilities? In here, we can go in and adjust our, how it shows that meter of fair versus poor. We can adjust where those limits are set. We can do that for our air quality devices, our power devices, whether it's 110, 120 volt power or PoE power. If we look at the AirThings thresholds, we can put in here and see where we want it to be for battery level. When do we want it to be poor? CO2 level, humidity. Humidity can be determined to be different in different parts of the U.S. I know South Louisiana humidity and Arizona humidity are two completely different things. And you might want to adjust these percentages of what you think high and low is, depending on where the client lives. Now, if we look at the Blue Pult power, we can set in here what we want wattage to be for fair, temperature, daily usage, voltage, we can set that in here as well. And then when you go to POE, we can go to wattage and temperature. For example, if you wanted to show what temperature is on that switch, this is from a Netgear switch, so it'll show the internal switch temperature. And you can adjust these fair and poor conditions. And you can also do event maps off of fair and poor. If the power is in a poor consideration, you can send push notifications. So, or temperature notifications. If the switch is getting to 150 degrees, you might want to know that it racks a little warm, and send a push notification accordingly. All righty. So that brings us to the end of this, and I'm just under an hour. Let's see what questions we might have for this section, and then I've got a couple slides toward at the end.
Can you use Milo to go to a specific TV channel?
You can use Milo to go to favorites. You would have to have that saved as a favorite to trigger that favorite. With that, you need to name them very specific. For example, when you do the autonomics favorites, it pulls in and usually it will go Spotify, something, blah, 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 and a bunch of numbers and letters. If you do Pandora, it'll go Pandora and then something radio. I usually recommend editing the names to make them very simple names. But if you save a favorite for ESPN, I'll tell you right now, sometimes phonetically you might need to change the name of devices and change it to sports. So it knows to go to sports versus ESPN, depending on how much accent you have in your voice. I know one of our sales guys is an Aussie, and none of the voice controls like his voice. So, any other questions?
That's all I've got.
All righty. With that, I want to bring up and show link to the new forum. For those that have been to the old forum, the new forum is a new website. All the stuff from the old forum has been imported over. Due to the font changes from the old forum to the new forum, some of the old posts still have some gibberish in the font that we are working on getting changed, but it has to be done per post, which is taking some time, but we'll eventually get there. But a forum is a managed forum by us. And you'll have engineering, product managers, RTSs, tech support in there, usually daily, looking at things and making comments. But it gives you an easy way for dealers to talk to other dealers and ask questions. With the forum, we also came out with a help portal. Yes, a help portal. Let's let you help yourself. There is a knowledge base built in here. Issues, workarounds, tech alerts, video notes are all popped here. If you notice, there is a report form. Yes, you have the ability to enter your own bugs. I will warn you, if you put a bug in here and you just say it's broke, you need to fix it, it will get deleted, or you will get asked for more information and continually ask for more information until you give us more information. If you are going to put a a bug report in here, make sure you document everything needed to reproduce it. We have to be able to reproduce bugs to find bugs and fix bugs. Okay. And there are also links in here for our beta program and API program. All right. With that being said, thank you for attending. This video will be posted shortly. Well, I say shortly. We're closed tomorrow for the 4th. So if this doesn't get posted this afternoon, it'll probably get posted early next week to Management Cloud, YouTube, and the help site. So everybody that attended, thank you for attending and enjoy the rest of your day.